Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher who investigates science that's generally very old, very new, or very esoteric. Alright, so you may remember this image behind me from the controversial episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with Randall Carlson, and it's called the Plasmoid Unification Model, the brainchild of Malcolm Bendall and drawn up for him by Steve Earle. And it's one of the most curious and mind-stretching diagrams that I've ever laid eyes on. I've been warned by Malcolm that this might send me bald like him, but despite this ominous foretelling, in this video series we're going to attempt to decipher this thing, at least a little bit. So in part one of this series we're just going to take a quick lay of the land and discuss some of the important precursory ideas, like the ether, or unified field, and the alternative form of mathematics Malcolm has used to construct the PUM. So what is the PUM and why is it relevant and important? So the Plasmoid Unification Model shows how ether, sound, elements, planets, the precession of time, and everything else you can see here on the poster, which we'll look more deeply into soon, how they algorithmically relate to each other. And it gives us the base theory behind Malcolm's new inventions and shows how energy at rest can be converted to matter and imprinted with a specific time or frequency. So, as we all probably know by now, pre-1900s and for a little while afterwards, a majority of important physicists, such as Nikola Tesla, Max Planck, Isaac Newton, Oliver Heaviside, the whole gang, there's plenty more of them, they based their discoveries on the idea that there was a unified field of energy from which all matter came, a subtle medium, energy at rest, so without frequency, time, or spatial dimensions. This is the ether. And the ether's pretty much been written out of textbook physics since that time, and it's resulted in modern physics becoming more and more abstract and theoretical until today, where we're faced with a dead end that we probably should have recognized decades ago. Our current models do not sufficiently explain things like dark matter or action at a distance or black holes, and some of the most important equations and models that are now being taught contain completely arbitrary numbers to make them work. And this is true, and it doesn't need to be the case. You know, it means perhaps there is another model out there. But in recent decades, we're seeing the ether being returned to its rightful place at the center of our scientific thought. And some modern researchers like Marco Rodin, Randall Carlson, Ken Wheeler, and many others have been promoting this return to genuine science for some time already, beginning to build a new picture of the lost ancient sciences with their respective discoveries in mathematics, magnetism, geology, field theory, etc. And Malcolm Bendall is cut from the same mold. He's not teaching conventional physics and chemistry, he's propounding a new model completely. And people don't usually like this, I get it. They scream bloody arrogance at anyone who doesn't seek to meet the criteria of current academic opinion. But let's get this straight. Writing the ether, the unified field, out of science is true arrogance. This is true arrogance. Writing it back in is paying respect to the honest scientists of the past and to the host of revolutionaries who've sometimes died trying to give us back the technology that has without a doubt been suppressed over and over again for the last 120 years. And so with that being said, this is where we can begin with the Plasmoid Unification Model. So, as we've discussed, there is a unified field of energy, the ether, from which the other more commonly known four states of matter, solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, originate from. And as you can see up here in the top left corner of the PUM, we can refer to energy in this state as DC, direct current, energy at rest. Essentially, it's just unlimited potential at this point, yet unformed by the mold of time. It's no frequency and all frequencies simultaneously. And Malcolm explains that when we have all frequencies, all matter combined, we also have no frequency, no matter. Like if we mix all of the paints of our color palette, we end up with grey, all colors, but also no color. Or if we paint a paper circle with different colors and then we make it spin, as children often do in school, we'll see the color disappear when it's spinning fast enough. And similarly, the unified field is just like this. It contains all information, all possible frequencies, but it's in a state where it's yet unmolded by time, like an endless ocean of water or air with no vessel to contain it. And then we come to our sun. So our sun is an ether to matter converter. In other words, it's a time imprinting device transforming ether, DC current at rest, into matter, AC current with a frequency. And ether has the same structure as matter, however it's permanence at rest, whereas matter is permanence in motion. The sun is contained by, or more accurately is, a toroidal magnetic field, just like our Earth and all of the other stars, planets, and other entities like us. And like all toroidal magnetic fields, the magnetic field of the sun occurs simultaneously with its inverse hyperspatial poloidal field from the 0 point. And the poloidal field and the 0 point are also sometimes referred to by the likes of Ken Wheeler and Charles Proteus Steinmetz as the hyperboloidal dielectric field and dielectric portal. And also the 0 point is commonly referred to as a black hole in other circles. And we already know from our conventional understanding of black holes that matter can be pulled into what we commonly refer to as the south pole, otherwise known as the centripetally converging vortex, or the contracting vortex of the toroid, where the atomic bonds of the matter are then disassociated and the resulting components return to the state of ether, DC current, or energy at rest in no time and no space. Inversely, ether is again converted to matter and is ejected from the so-called north pole, the centrifugally diverging or expanding vortex of the toroid. And so in the case of our sun, the time mode or the frequency which it's applying to the ejected matter is that of protium, our most fundamental particle designation, which is the most abundant isotope of the hydrogen group and the most abundant element in our universe. And it has a melting point or phase change point of minus 259.2 degrees Celsius and an elemental frequency of 25,920 cycles per second. So why this phase change point and frequency exactly? So 25,920 is what we call the great year frequency. And to break down what that means, every 25,920 years, the sun, the moon, the earth, and the naked eye planets arrive at exactly the same points they were at 25,920 years ago. And so the great year frequency could perhaps be considered the true metronome or the base frequency of our universe. But we'll get back to that soon. And you can always go and check out Randall Carlson's lectures on this, as he's been the one to really propagate this idea in modern times. So protium's frequency is set by the great year frequency. And where does the sun come in then? So let's start to think about Plato's music of the spheres. The sun has a diameter of 864,000 miles. If we divide minus 259.2, which is the phase change point of protium, or hydrogen, by 3, we get minus 86.4. We've got minus 86.4, and then the diameter of the sun is 864,000. And so this is where we need to stop and talk about something else before we carry on. So in modern conventional mathematics, minus 86.4 and 864,000 share little relevance with each other, except for the similarity of the individual digits that they contain. And in alternative systems of mathematics, such as Marco Rodin's vortex-based maths and Malcolm Bendalls' alien maths, or Sanskrit maths, which we're about to talk about, each of the digits can also be considered individually. So their sequence within the whole number simply refers to the dimension that the digits currently occupy, and the zeros simply indicate the level of amplification. So Malcolm gives an example that if we look at the numbers 864, 846, 684, 648, 486, and 468, it really doesn't matter what sequence they're in. If we multiply them or we add them together, we will always end up with the same numbers. And in this case, if we add any of the above digit sequences together, the sum will be 18. And if we multiply any of the digit sequences together, we get 192. And this is what's important here, rather than the sequence of the digits themselves. Otherwise, in Sanskrit maths, we can consider these seemingly different sequences fundamentally as the same number. And again, we might consider this a new idea in modern times, but it's actually a very old form of mathematics that was well known by all ancient cultures. And we can tell this for a fact by examining the structures such as the pyramids and temples and other buildings, where we find the utilization of these same sequences of numbers again and again and again. For example, the angle of the slope of the casing of the Great Pyramid is 51.84 degrees, which is both a fraction of 29,520, and if divided by 2 equals 25.92 degrees, and correlates again with the phase change point of protium and the Great Year frequency. And I really appreciate the fact that Malcolm gives credit to the Vedic civilization of Bharat, or India, here by giving the term Sanskrit mathematics. Because if we look back in the history books of India, we can find many records of many important scientific concepts, such as the Fibonacci spiral, Pythagoras' theorem, predating the Greeks by hundreds and even thousands of years. And it's really about time someone's giving them credit instead of just writing India out of colonial Western history altogether, which is the norm. At any rate, if we look at the melting point of protium divided by 3, minus 86.4, and the diameter of the Sun, 864,000 miles, through the lens of Sanskrit mathematics, they represent the same number or frequency, just at different amplitudes. And so if we try and twist our minds into a toroid to try and understand what's going on here, we can see that it's not really a simple case of either the Sun determining the frequency of protium or the Great Year, or of protium or the Great Year determining the resonant frequency or the dimensions of the Sun. Rather, we can explain it most easily by saying that absolutely everything in our multiverse is always in perfect octave harmony with everything else. So let's provide some more evidence for this claim. If we take the diameters and the distances between each other of the Sun, the Moon and the Earth, the three most important celestial bodies of our galaxy, we will obtain some interesting numbers. So the diameter of the Sun, we know, is 864,000 miles. The average distance between the Sun and the Earth is 93,312,000 miles, which happens to be exactly 108 times 864,000 miles, the diameter of the Sun again. So similarly, if we take the diameter of the Moon, 2,160 miles, and the average distance between the Moon and the Earth, 233,280 miles, we can see that the average distance between the Moon and the Earth is again exactly 108 times 2,160, the diameter of the Moon. And then again, if we take the diameter of the Moon again, and we create a square around the Moon, and we find the sum of the four sides of the square, guess what we get? We get 8,640, which is the same number we get for the diameter of the Sun. 864,000, but again with less amplification. Another little fact from this one's from Randall Carlson. If we take the diameters of the Moon and the Earth and we stack the two vertically together like so, and then we draw a circle around them, we can then draw a square around our inner Earth circle like so, and we will find that by doing this we have squared the outer circle that encases both the Moon and the Earth. So this means that the square we've drawn around the Earth and the circle surrounding the Earth and the Moon have the exact same area, which is just pretty cool. And you can try and claim this is all just random chance or number juggling if you like, but the evidence isn't particularly in your favor so far. There are two obvious things that all of this should probably tell us. So one, our universe is of intelligent design, and everything's operating in perfect harmonic resonance. And two, we really need to throw away the metric system and go back to using imperial measurements. Apparently the imperial system only seems ridiculous if you've learned a warped and deformed system of mathematics that's obsessed with ones and zeros. And as Marco Rodin has been telling us for 3 decades, numbers are real and alive. Real mathematics isn't arbitrary, and neither is the imperial measurement system, apparently. Now, I know this doesn't constitute evidence of intelligent design yet for real skeptics out there, but this is really only the tip of the proverbial harmonic iceberg here. So in this video we've just introduced the plasmoid unification model, explained why it's important. We've introduced alien or Sanskrit maths, which shares many similarities with Marco's VBM, of course, and we began to explore the relations between the Sun, Moon and the Earth. And in the next part of the series we're going to break down the periphery areas around the outside of the PUM and explore more deeply how everything in the universe is in perfect octave harmonic resonance with itself. And we'll break down the numbers in each of the 4 tables given in the 4 corners, and we'll also take a much deeper dive into understanding how ether is converted into matter and imprinted with time or frequency. And we'll explore the importance of the number 9 and some of the other sacred numbers too, and start to really attempt to show how all things in our universe have an algorithmic relationship to each other. And finally, in the third part, we will take a look into the diagram itself and investigate how we can use the plasmoid unification model to explore the relations between elements, music, time, seasons, degrees of the arc, language, and everything else you see here on the poster. And lastly, just in the spirit of transparency, I'm really no expert in any of this. In my defense, there's only a handful of people in the world who are even trying to begin to understand this stuff. And these videos are really just my university experience, because there is no normal university I can study at. And I find it's really the only way I can grasp complex topics like this, just to force myself to break them down and try and teach them to other people. And that's why I do it. So if I get something wrong, tell me, I'll correct it. This is part of the learning experience for me. On the other hand, if you're just generally offended by the way I learn or conduct my own research, as the occasional commenter tells me they are, well, suck it up and piss off back to your hole in the ground, This isn't meant for you, and I'm just going to keep going ahead and doing it the way I want to. And to the rest of my lovely and supportive viewers, thanks for sharing the vision. Keep on learning and experimenting with an open heart and mind. We're building on something really great here, and as Malcolm's often said, we truly stand on the shoulders of giants, and I personally believe he is one of them. So like the video and subscribe to the channel to catch the next part in the series. Bye. Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher who investigates science that's usually either very new, very old, or very esoteric. I wrote another script for this video originally, but after a few days of heavy study, I've scrapped the original plan and decided we need to spend a little more time building a comprehensive picture of each little element in the plasmoid unification model. The pieces of the puzzle are falling together for me, and I repeat, this thing is incredible. Nikola Tesla famously proclaimed that we should consider all things in terms of resonance or vibration. The Greek philosophers said that the planets cycled rhythmically in perfect harmony with one another in the cosmos, a concept labeled as the music of the spheres. All ancient cultures tended to agree on that, really. The Indians, Egyptians, Mayan, Chinese, and pretty much every other known culture in the past employed complex systems of astronomy and mathematics in their architecture, design, and art. They've left it transparently encoded for us in structures like the pyramids and the great temples. Through the work of pioneering modern researchers like Malcolm Bendall, Randall Carlson, and many, many, many others, we can now clearly see the relations between our ancient architecture and the cosmos, and it's undeniable that our predecessors held the key to advanced knowledge and technology. I personally believe this master key has already been returned to us, not suddenly in some kind of conspiracy-level outbreak of new knowledge, but slowly over the least 1,000 years by thousands of people who've taken up the quest. It's only that all too often we so quickly forget what the scientists of the past left us, and we ignore what the scientists of the present are now offering us, and we can't see the forest for the trees. This has been building up to the final stretch of the race for years, and I'm calling it now. It's here. The quest to restore the holy grail of science. This begins to explain the fractal cosmic relationships between all things in our galaxy, and we can find all of it condensed into Malcolm Bendall's plasmoid unification model. I'll reference everyone's work who I'm drawing from and send you to their respective sites and channels for more resources in the description as usual. So let's choose the diameters of the Sun, the Moon, and the Earth, and the distance between them in miles as our starting point to explain all of this again. We've spoken about them briefly in part 1 of the plasmoid unification model series. The full precession of the equinox, one full cosmic cycle, occurs every 25,920 years. The naked eye planets all occupy exactly the same positions in the sky as they did at the beginning of the cycle, and we call this the Great Year. The diameter of the Sun is 864,000 miles, and it has a radius of 432,000 miles. The diameter of the Moon is 2,160 miles. The diameter of Earth is 7,920 miles. The average distance between the Sun and the Earth is 108 times 864,000 miles. The average distance between the Moon and the Earth is 108 times 2,160 miles. And then the Moon travels its own diameter of 2,160 miles every hour. In 12 hours, the number of hours represented on our historic clock face, this equals 25,920 miles. In 24 hours, this equals 51,840 miles. From this, we can see how this spatial precession of the moon over 24 hours doesn't just show us how the moon moves over 24 hours, it shows us what 24 hours is. We've just converted space and time using the same methodology that the ancients did. This is also why you'll find the 5184 numbers representing time in Malcolm's plasmoid unification model. It may not yet be clear, but if you continue to focus your attention on the ratios, the harmonic intervals occurring between the numbers, as well as the repeating numbers themselves, you should start to form a picture. If we then take out 51,840 miles that the moon travels in 24 hours, and we divide each hour by 60 minutes, we get 864, minus the zeros, the diameter of the sun again. Let's look more closely at time. If we multiply 24 hours in a day by 60 minutes in an hour, we get 1,440. We'll see on the plasmoid unification model that 144,000 represents light, or the maximum angular velocity of light in geometric terms. If we multiply 24 hours by 60 minutes by 60 seconds, we get 864,000, diameter of the sun again, of course. So don't try and tell me this is coincidence. This is the music of the spheres. These are the harmonic relationships between time and space and everything else on our Earth and in our galaxy and perhaps our wider multiverse. We can see clearly why the Sumerians employed a base 60 counting system to measure time. Let's go deeper. If we take the great year frequency, or the distance of the moon travelled in 12 hours, the number of hours represented on our clock face, we now know by now it's 25,920. So this is our overall metronome for time. 25,920 miles, the moon travels in 12 hours, and there are 25,920 seconds in 12 hours. As you would expect by now, 25,920 seconds is also a fancy way of saying 432 minutes. This is expanded even further on the plasmoid unification model, so I encourage you to take some time exploring it yourself. Let's jump over to music. You may have all heard of the debate over what should be the standard concert pitch used globally. A is currently tuned to 440 Hz, and the other notes are tuned harmonically to that frequency. The concert pitch used to be A 432 Hz, as it has been traditionally, for as far as we can tell, thousands of years in many cultures. Obviously, this change is a little ominous, and it's caused fierce controversy over the years. And I think you'll begin to agree with me when I say there is a large case for A 432 Hz being a standard concert pitch which has no competitor. First, we find that if we take the 25,920 great year and we divide it by 60, the base 60 counting system we've already discussed, we've established for time, we get 432. We can get this number about a billion other ways as well, but here we are showing the harmonics between two numbers we already know. For example, we could just take the radius of the Sun, 432,000 miles. A equals 432. From here, our ancient musicians have already given us the answers, with which we used to tune all our instruments with before arbitrarily, and with much artificial hubris switching over to 440 Hz. We know these are the correct frequencies for the notes based on a 432 Hz concert pitch, because they've always been this way, and these precise harmonic relationships are what cause all music to sound good. We can see these notes in their mathematical ratios here on this table. If we take our A equals 432 and multiply it by 1.5, which is a ratio of 3 to 2, we call this harmonic interval perfect fifth, and we'll get the note E at a frequency of 324 Hz. We can continue on finding those frequencies by multiplying the unison note, A equals 432, by the numbers in the decimal column below this, or we can divide 432 by the numbers in the decimal columns above A 432, and we'll find we get the frequencies of the other notes. And we can of course check the musical intervals and the ratio between each note and A 432 there on the table as well. If you weren't taking note and didn't see the same numbers you're seeing in the plasmoid unification model in the frequencies of the A432 musical scale, the base frequency of our musical octave, you can surely see them in this table from Stanford University, which shows you what they titled the most harmonic numbers. This screenshot is credit to Jamie Buturf, and I hope he doesn't mind me stealing it for this presentation. I give him credit for a lot of the information I'm presenting here on music, and I encourage everyone to go and watch his videos to learn more about his totally undervalued work. Stanford constructed this table simply by starting with 1 in the top left corner and then forming the far left column by doubling 1 and then continuing to double each number, and then forming the top row by tripling the 1 and then again tripling each consecutive number. The matrix of the table is filled out by taking the sum of the first row and the first column of numbers. We find all of the frequencies for our A equals 432 concert pitch scale here as well, and we can also find pretty much all of the numbers Malcolm has again correlated in the PUM. 144, 144,000 being the angular velocity of light, 432 being the radius of the sun and the basis of our entire musical system, 5184 being our metronome for time itself, set by the movement of the daily orbit of the moon around Earth, 2592, 25,920 being the great year frequency, the full precession of the equinox. I needn't go on, you can explore the rest for yourself. This table gives us a fantastic method to determine the base frequencies of our universe, starting with the number 1 and using just doubling and multiplication by 3 to flesh out all of our cosmic harmonic numbers. We can also, of course, find the musical notes represented on Malcolm's PUM, but I need to delve deeper into that myself still. While we're referencing Jamie Butoff's research, we should also note that he clearly outlines to us the links between the music of the spheres and Malcolm's plasmoid unification model, which is a visual representation thereof, and also Marco Rodin's vortex-based mathematics. Let's work backwards for a moment and delve into how all of these numbers can be derived from vortex-based maths, showing a direct correlation between the work of Malcolm and Marco Rodin. It's as simple as this. The frequencies and numbers we've talked about so far can be derived from VBM. VBM's a modernized mathematical language which underlies the construction of this harmonic frequency spectrum of our universe. The magic 396 isn't a frequency itself, as it's commonly confused to be. It's instead one of the family number groups, the base code, from which the A432 Hz frequency and harmonic scale is constructed from. To get there from VBM, we can take our Abha cipher and find our family number groups easily. I've got a whole video on Marco's Abha cipher, so feel free to go and check that out if you're interested. At any rate, we can derive the famous family number groups from the cipher: 147, 258, and 396. Then Jamie shows us how we can find our frequencies interwoven and hidden within these deceptively simple sequences of numbers. A Dr. Paleo, who I haven't checked out myself, I've just seen Jamie reference, also famously discovered these family number groups, and he published them in a book a few decades ago. And he made the mistake of using the family number groups as his direct basis to form what he believed was the harmonic musical scale, which we now know is the incorrect method, although many people still get tricked by this one, and there is tons of disinformation online. So Paleo derived the following frequencies for the solfeggio by scrambling the family number groups. So 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, and 852. And Jamie claims, and he's self-evidently correct in my opinion, when he says that this is an abstraction and not the correct method. Instead, the family number groups are only used as the base equation, the base code to determine the correct harmonic frequency scale, which is of course what we find fleshed out even further in the PUM. Just using Paleo's incorrect shuffled numbers here to give some examples, if we take 693 and we subtract 396, its opposite shifted pair, we get 243, which is 432 shifted to the right. If we take 741 and subtract 417, this equals 324, which is 432 shifted 2 places to the right. And if we take 852 and subtract 528, its pair there, that's 324, which is 432 shifted 2 places to the right again. So Jamie shows us how we can derive a lot of other important frequencies and harmonic intervals from the VBM family number groups that we can find again condensed in the PUM, and this helps to form a conclusive link between the work of Malcolm and Marco. This is why Malcolm Bendall, Nikola Tesla, Marco Rodin, Jamie Butoff, and so many others revere the 6, 9, and 3. These numbers are holographic fractals, and a wealth of further information can be derived from them. That's even an understatement. We can then go further backwards and see how the family number groups, the keystones of VBM, can be ascertained from the Fibonacci sequence, as outlined by Tom Barnett in his videos, which I've often referenced in my own videos explaining concepts related to VBM and Rodin coils. I'll link to his videos in the description and you can check out that process yourself. This video is getting pretty long, so I won't repeat it unnecessarily. From here we can make the already well-established jump to see how the Fibonacci sequence of numbers can be ascertained from the golden ratio, which we can find all around us, everywhere in nature, as is well documented in all fields of science. You can really see how this is truly a unification theory, right? There are some really quite astounding correlations here. Malcolm has provided some pretty next-level information on this in his toroidal model of the elements, but I'm still just in the process of my own research on this, and it needs a video of its own. I'm just building the bigger picture still for now, so we can continue to go deeper. If we would like to find our family number groups and the 396 again, we can look no further than the famous tarot cards. Ever wondered why all the pre-1900s books on the tarot say that the cards, which are popularly sold as a device for fortune telling, actually have a much more important secret knowledge of numbers hidden within the arrangement of the deck? We can find precisely the same sequences and families of numbers clearly hidden within the tarot, and I'll do another whole video on that at some point when I have the time, because it's really interesting to see how many people throughout history have realized what we're talking about here and hidden it for us in plain sight. I want to jump back to considering time and space and see if I can explain how time, space, and frequency, and music, numbers, and the ratios between the planets, and everything else we've discussed so far can be converted into geometry, and the 360 degrees of the compass and the cardinal directions. And spoiler alert, I can explain it. And I'll leave you with this. The circumference of a circle can be partitioned into 360 degrees of arc. Each of the 360 degrees of arc can be further divided into 60 minutes of arc, just as we do with time. This equals 21,600 minutes of arc, the number of our timekeeper, the moon. Each of the 60 minutes of arc can be further divided into 1,296,000 seconds of arc, which we'll see noted on as our resonant frequency energy unit in seconds on the plasmoid unification model. But that's enough for this video. We'll get to the rest later this week. From geometry, we can move on to talk about ancient and modern architecture and elemental crystal forms and time being the mold in which matter forms, and see where all of that leads us. All coming in part 3. And I want to thank Malcolm for everything he's given us. It's all there, we just need to unpack it. And also a big thanks to Marco Roden, who's been teaching me a whole lot and making all of this much easier. And to Jamie Buturf, who I feel has been totally overlooked and undervalued as a researcher, like so many interesting minds. Please consider subscribing to the channel or donating if you've got something from this video. I'm open source and independent, and I would love to spend more. Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher who investigates science that's both very old, very new, and also very esoteric. In this third part of our series on deciphering the PUM, we're going to further explore the conversion of time, the movements of the planets through space and sacred geometry, in particular Circle and the Vesica Pisces, and we're also going to see where we can find these quantizations of time well represented in two significant world scriptures along the way. Once again, I stress that I'm learning along with everyone else here. This is my Plasmoid Unification University experience, and I'm sharing the working process with the channel because I know that many others are deeply interested in gaining a better insight into Malcolm's PUM while we're still in these stages of building a solid picture. If you're not interested yet, I encourage you to hold your judgment until you begin to see the results from the independent papers and trials that'll be emerging quite soon around the practical technology. And what's most interesting about all of this is that the knowledge Malcolm's condensed into what he's named the Plasmoid Unification model actually already has an immediate practical application in the form of the Thunderbolt generator, which we've already covered. And it also lays the groundwork to understand a number of Malcolm's other future inventions, technology plans, such as the Vajra implosive static turbine or the Bendall turbine, and the world power plant, and the construction of the harmonic model of the elements presented in the PUM, which, if we can further verify and understand, could provide the basis for almost limitless subsequent practical applications on all scales of science and industry. Remember, Alchemical Science is completely open source and independent, and if you can afford to donate a little or a lot, it will ensure I can spend as much time as possible breaking down and sharing ideas like this, and working on related open source projects. And thanks very much to everyone who has already donated. I've already made some minor equipment upgrades, such as a light and a green screen, due to your generosity. In this presentation, I'm going to be using the fantastic app you can see here, Cosmic Watch, to demonstrate some key ideas related to the conversion and division of time and space using astronomy. As usual, I'm unaffiliated, but this is a really fantastic tool from a quite visionary company who clearly understands a number of the concepts that we're talking about here, and they're presenting it through advanced astronomical modeling in Cosmic Watch. And you can get that on the Android and the Apple App Store for tablet or phones. So check out the links in the description to get the app for yourself and have a play around. It has a small price tag, but what the app can teach you in a day through its simple visual interface is really invaluable. So we begin with our celestial sphere view on. All the planets are condensed into an easily viewable sphere, but their essential ratios and movements over time are maintained. So let's start by turning the planet names on, so we can see where everything is situated in the sky at this current moment. And then we can turn on the celestial rings as well, so that we can get our bearings and define the path the planets take in their orbits. We have the ability to speed up and reverse time. And the app shows us the movement of the planets around the celestial ecliptic based on advanced astrological modeling. And so this gives us the ability to fundamentally see how the planets orbit our Earth from the geocentric perspective, commonly used by both ancient and modern astronomers, and investigate the timing and the geometry involved in their orbits and the divisions which can be made. And the reason why the ancients often chose to reference a geocentric astronomical perspective is, of course, because they believed, or perhaps we could tentatively suggest that they understood, that our universe is gyroscopic. So the Sun orbits the Earth, and the Earth orbits the Sun. We choose a relevant frame of reference for the task at hand, and then we discuss these gyroscopic orbits using that chosen frame of reference as our anchor point. And the geocentric model is very useful in discussing most things related to Earth, although other models clearly have their equally important place in modeling and understanding the harmonic mechanics of the greater universe. And I also need to note that I'm going to be using the sidereal zodiac in this video, simply because I'm more familiar with it from previous research. And Cosmic Watch displays the tropical zodiac by default, but depending on what system you're familiar with or which you're investigating, you can go and change the views in the About menu, Advanced Settings, and you can change between... Oh, no, I'm actually on tropical zodiac there. We're going back to sidereal. There we go. So you can change that yourself if you need. And towards the celestial North Pole here, you can see the Tropic of Cancer, this line, and towards the South Pole down here, we can see the Tropic of Capricorn, and with the celestial equator marked there neatly between the two. If we gently spin our cosmic sphere, we can see the ecliptic, the light blue line, the clearly defined celestial band or plane on which the Sun, Moon, and planets can be seen making their harmonically timed journey through the zodiac. And we can see that the ecliptic is on an angle to the axis of the rotation of the Earth itself. So if we speed up time, let's do that, we can see that the planets oscillate between the two tropics of Cancer and Capricorn in cycles, and it's very reminiscent of a cyclic spherical AC sine wave, which doesn't exist, but you know. And I encourage you to also check out the Antipodean Astro Calendar, in which Brian Keats demonstrates these concepts in another simple form that's really easy to digest and understand. And you can also find a video on my channel going through the calendar step by step and explaining the rhythms from this perspective and how they relate to the lunar and solar cycles, which are used for agricultural crop planting. So check out the link to his website and where you can get that calendar if you would like to check that out. So now we can go and turn on our seasonal clock view in Cosmic Watch, and we can witness how the Sun moves through autumn and winter and spring and summer, and also So here's our sun there. If we speed it up a bit more, we can see it moving there, but also how it oscillates between the two tropics as it takes its journey there. So you'll see that it goes on this axis to the tropics, moving between the two, creating our seasons. And these seasons on the clock there are probably going to be based on my location in Victoria, Australia. So from this incredibly simple example, we can already see how space, time, and our night sky are really deeply intertwined subjects. We can further divide the band of the ecliptic into months by turning on this year view here, and we can see the complete cycle of the year with the sun moving through those months. And once again, based on my own location in this example. And then if we switch to Cosmic Watch's time view, so that's up here, we can further divide the ecliptic into days, or in this case, a clock face divided into the 24 hours that we can use to keep time on Earth. So here's our clock face. We can always turn off our seasons so we can see it a little clearer there. And we can put our time on there to see this clock in action. Although the gyroscopic dance of the sun and the earth causes the timing of the seasons and the divisions of the days, the moon acts similarly. As it travels its own diameter of 2,160 miles each hour during orbit around the Earth, the moon also traverses the celestial clock face, acting as a metronome, harmonically tuned to the movements of the Earth and the sun, and to those of time itself, as it's perceived from our frame of reference on Earth. So we can see our moon moving really slowly. Oh, sorry, there we go. If we move it up, here it is rushing around. I can turn the label on so that you can clearly see where it is, so you're not seeing me pointing. So there's our moon acting as a metronome. And if we want to pause time, we'll bring it back to regular time. So if we turn to zodiac view, just here, and we turn back on our ecliptic clock face, there it is. We can see the clock face marked out in Cosmic Watch is not using the same reference point for the divisions of the 24-hour clock face that Malcolm's using in the PUM. Currently, the reverse engineering of ancient time systems and modern time systems through astronomical modeling is still in its infancy, and even if we all end up agreeing on an appropriate base numerical system for a certain task, there's always ultimately going to be different reference points that we can take as our starting point, depending on where we're coming at the theory from or what we're using it to discern. However, varying reference points for 24 hours and 0 hours aside, Cosmic Watch's time views clearly demonstrate the same principles Malcolm's employed in constructing the PUM, and it gives us a really good visual point for further investigation into the numbers in the PUM based on advanced astronomical observation and modeling. And while we're still here in Zodiac view, I'll quickly explain another concept with Cosmic Watch that many people have perhaps not seen shown so simply before. So we can also turn on the Zodiac constellation view, and then we will see the star constellations themselves. So we'll turn on Zodiac. There, we can see them around the band. We could turn off the Zodiac view band if we want, but you can see our 12 signs of the Zodiac situated along the ecliptic there. The Sun, Moon, and the planets process through the 12 constellations, or what we've classified as the 12 zodiac signs, on their cyclic journey around the ecliptic. As we delve deeper into understanding how our ancient mathematical concepts of time were constructed based on the harmony of the spheres, we continue to discover the base 24 counting system is absolutely integral to our understanding of time as a dimension, and that our division of time is not arbitrary either. It's based on observable harmonic astrophysical phenomena such as the movement of the sun and the moon in miles over one Earth day, and these distances in miles as shown on the PUM. They're all harmonics themselves of the diameters of the sun, moon, and Earth, and the ratio and distance between them in the solar system. 2,160 is the diameter of the moon in miles and the distance it travels in 1 hour. So this equals 24 times 90 or 12 times 180.
And 864,000 miles, the diameter of the sun, is 24 times 36,000. And we'll get back to those numbers later. And I want to apologize for all these crows in the background. Australia, the land of birds.
If we remember back to our first part in the PUM series, I explained that in the system of mathematics Malcolm has used in the PUM, which he refers to as Sanskrit mathematics, as well as other base systems of mathematics, both alternative and conventional, the zeros simply represent amplification or orders of magnitude. When we see 864,000, we know this number is a certain order of magnitude above the harmonic base number of 864. So we'll continuously see that 864 and the other key numbers on the PUM come up again and again in our cyclic exploration. Their level of amplification in reference to each other denoted by the zeros and the decimals. Therefore, when we see a number like 36,000, this is 3 orders of magnitude above the number 36 and 2 orders of magnitude above 360. As we perceive it through the lens of the plasmoid unification model, these 36 base numbers all share an octave harmonic relationship with each other, not just mathematically, but in observable physics of our solar system. Let's quickly run through some numbers based on and expanded from the periphery of the PUM and Malcolm's notes, starting with some numbers we've already discussed and also pushing the boundaries a little deeper, so you can begin to catch the cyclic harmonic numbers in their various orders of magnitude as we encounter them repeatedly through the future videos. Going back to the base 24 counting system, which we use to calculate Earth time, one Earth day is divided into 24 hours. 24 hours equals 1,440 minutes, which is the base number 144 representing light, which we've already spoken briefly about and we'll get into a little more later. 1,440 minutes equals 86,400 seconds. 864, the base number of the diameter of the sun again. 12 hours equals 720 minutes, 72 being related to the Vesica Pisces, which we'll get to later. And 720 minutes equals 432,000 seconds, 432,000 being the radius of the sun again there. We can see another harmonic conversion method hidden within our base counting systems for time if we shift the base numbers fractally through the different units for time: years, days, minutes, seconds, and arc seconds, etc. These harmonic unit divisions themselves are repeating, and we could continue to make smaller or larger divisions on any scale of our universal fractal based on our desired reference point in space-time. The precession of the moon around Earth. So the moon traverses 51,840 miles over 24 hours, so a full day cycle, and it traverses 25,920 miles over 12 hours, so a half day cycle. And 2,160 miles over 1 hour, and that's also the moon's diameter. We find variations of the same familiar numbers again if we take 51,840 seconds, and 5184 is a very important base number which Malcolm claims represents time itself in numbers. So we'll see 518,400 denoting time, 4D, on the PUM, and we'll also see why exactly he uses 518,400 seconds specifically here shortly. So if we convert the unit from miles to minutes, we have 51,840 seconds, or 864 minutes, which is also 14.4 hours, a variation of 144 light again there. 51,840 is a symmetrical harmonic frequency of 25,920, our great year number, and 25,920 seconds equals 432 minutes, the radius of the sun and the relation to our concert pitch musical frequency again. 432 minutes equals 7.2 hours, so our 7.2 again being the number which relates and represents the Vesica Pisces. Half of 25,920 seconds equals 12,960 seconds. 12,960 seconds equals 216 minutes, 216 being a harmonic number of the moon's diameter in miles. Half of 12,960 seconds equals 6,480 seconds. 6,480 seconds equals 108 minutes, which is a harmonic of the moon's radius and the ratio between the sun, earth, and moon again there. We convert the unit variable to hours now, and we get 25,920 hours, and that equals 1,080 days, so another harmonic of the moon's radius, 108. You convert it to days, and we get 25,920 days, and that equals 72 years again, a Vesica Pisces number. And then if we take 51,840 again, and we add an order of magnitude to get 518,400, we'll have Malcolm's number representing time itself on the PUM. So 518,400 seconds equals 8,640 minutes, our sun diameter number. 8,640 minutes equals 144 hours, our light number. 144 hours equals the 6 days of creation spoken of in the Bible and the Christian tradition. And however, if we go the other way, and we divide 518,000 seconds into arc seconds, the next quantum time unit division after seconds, we get 311,040,000 arc seconds. And curiously, if we increase the order of magnitude by adding another 6 zeros to this number, we get 311,040,000,000,000. And this is recorded in the ancient Vedic scriptures as being the number of Earth years in the lifetime of Brahma. And if we switch from minutes and seconds to the Vedic measurements, we'll find that the conversion remains seamless. The lifetime of Brahma, 311,040,000,000,000 Earth years, can also be written as 100 years of Brahma. And so his lifetime consists of 100 years, 100 years of Brahma. 1 year of Brahma is then 3,011,040,000,000 Earth years, or 8,640,000,000 Daiva Varsha, our Vedic unit of measurement here. 1 year of Brahma equals 360 days and nights of Brahma, and 1 day and night of Brahma equals 8.64 billion Earth years, or 24 million Daiva Varsha. So dividing the complete day and night of Brahma into its two equal halves, we get the separate divisions of the day and the night of Brahma, 4.32 billion Earth years, or 12 million Daiva Varsha each. This can also be referred to in another Vedic unit for dividing time, a kalpa. So 4.32 billion Earth years equals 1 kalpa. Equal also to 1 kalpa, there are 1,000 Maha Yuga cycles. A yuga is a unit of measurement for time that's really commonly used throughout the Vedic literature. So 1,000 Maha Yugas is equal to 4.32 billion Earth years, or 1 kalpa, 1 day of Brahma, just the half of the full day and night. 1 Maha Yuga is then equal to 4,320,000 Earth years, or 12,000 Daiva Varsha. And then each Maha Yuga contains 4 divisions of Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwarpa Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga lasts 432,000 years, Dwarpa Yuga lasts 864,000 years, Treta Yuga is 1,296,000 years, and Satya Yuga is 1,728,000 years. So this order is in reverse, so you'll notice that the yugas halve in length each time the wheel progresses. So 432,000 is the base number here, and 36 Daiva Chakra, we can say. And we could divide the yugas into further divisions, and we could go on and on and on and on, and find all of the same numbers in the plasmoid unification model used prolifically by the ancient mathematicians of the East, the Daiva Varsha being their basic quantum standard of time. Back to 36 and 360 though, if you can still remember these important numbers from earlier when we were discussing 24 hours and 864, the diameter of the sun number.
Back to Cosmic Watch for a moment. We can see here an example of the ecliptic being now divided into 360 degrees instead of 24 hours if we put on the horizontal coordinates view. So we commonly use these 36 points to divide a circle into the equal parts of our compass, and from there we can map out our cardinal directions or perform other geometric operations.
But going back to the circle for a moment, let's briefly introduce a few important harmonic correlations between sacred geometry and some of the other concepts contained within the cipher of the plasmoid unification model. I'm going to heavily reference Randall Carlson, a true master of geometry, for this section. I learned a lot of these methods from his podcast and his Sacred Geometry course on HowTube, and I'll quote him directly in some parts, as there's no way I can really make it sound any more clear and precise than Randall already has. And I'll link to both of those references in the description as usual. So we'll begin with a point made by our compass, a frame of reference, a 0 point or singularity. And then we calculate a radius by adjusting our compass, and we draw a circle representing the ether, unity and infinity, the monad. By choosing a new point on the circumference of the circle to place our compass, we can draw in a second circle, using the first circle and its radius as our guide. The circle of unity bifurcates, forming a replica of itself, which translocates in any direction a length equal to its radius. The overlap of the two circles forms the Vesica Piscis, the dyad, represented on the PUM by the numbers 72. I can't say I understand this representation in the numbers yet, but we can find 432 minutes in 7.2 hours, and 720 minutes in 12 hours, and half of 144 is 72, so I'm sure I'll puzzle out 72's place in the web and its relation to the Vesica Piscis all in good time. In the words of Randall Carlson, the Vesica is the womb of all geometry. From this figure emerges the entire edifice of planar and solid geometry, and the archetypal matrix upon which the three worlds are built. It's also the supreme symbol of the feminine. The intersectional points of the horizontal mirror plane of the Vesica forms two new points. This line, the line of centers, structurally links the two circles. Taking these two new points and dividing the symmetrical horizontal plane and also the top point of the Vesica that we already had before, we can draw in two more equilateral radii to make a total of 3, which forms an equilateral triangle, symbol of the creative trinity, the triad. We can draw in a second equilateral triangle base to base with the first to form a rhombus with a width to length ratio of 3:1, the first manifestation of dynamic symmetry. A line between the two circles' intersection points is perpendicular to the line of centers and forms with it the right-angled cross. The Vesica Piscis generates both the right-angled cross and the equilateral triangle and symmetrical rhombus from its initial points and symmetrical plane. The cross, formed within the Vesica Piscis, then establishes the length-to-width ratio of the dynamic root-3 rectangle, the tetrad. According to Randall, the root-3 rectangle provided the fundamental module for much of the world's sacred art and architecture, and it is of course worth noting that it's the traditional shape of a door or an entryway, well-sized for a human being. The angles defined by these sacred geometry crystal structures are the cause of the harmonic frequency spectrum of matter and the harmonic table of the elements represented on the plasmoid unification model. As an additional note, we can also introduce another circle with a diameter equal to the width of the Vesica, with its center upon the crossing of the horizontal and vertical axes. This is called the quartering of the circle, and it's from here that we can move back onto the topic of our astronomical divisions, with these 4 points traditionally representing the 2 solstices and the 2 equinox to our ancient architects and masons. The Vesica Piscis is the keystone of sacred geometry and ancient architecture, and as one example, the ground plane of the cathedral plans are determined by the Vesica Piscis. I encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about sacred geometry and its direct applications in astronomy, architecture, and building to sign up to Randall's course on HowTube and get up to speed on the topic. As I say, he's a real master of the art and also a patient and easy to follow teacher as well. To further start to form a picture of how circles and rectangles translate to resonant frequency and matter on the PUM, we can take our 360 degrees of arc on the compass. This can be further quantized into 21,600 minutes of arc, just as we do with time. Remember that the 216 here, the 216, is our moon diameter number occurring again. So 21,600 minutes of arc can be further divided into 1,296,000 seconds of arc. 1,296,000 seconds is also Malcolm's number on the PUM, representing the resonant frequency energy unit, which can be used to calculate the harmonic resonant frequencies in the PUM table of the elements. We might finish up here in part 3 of the series. We still have a lot more to discuss in the area of sacred geometry and its relation to the harmonic table of the elements on the PUM, and also Malcolm's toroidal model of the elements, which we've not even touched on at all yet. There's some other graphics and models there. And we also haven't got to where we can find the numbers further in ancient architecture or art yet, as we said we would, but I thought it was important to build on these foundations further so that we can better understand the significance when we get there. So you'll find that if you've taken in everything that we've discussed so far in the first 3 parts of my series on this, the periphery blocks of the PUM should be becoming more familiar and readable. We haven't discussed 144,000, the angular velocity of light in geometric terms much yet, nor have we fully explored the significance of the Mod 9 counting system and the number 9 itself, although I'm sure anyone who's previously watched any of my videos on vortex-based mathematics probably has some idea of its importance already. But if you take another look at time, 518,400 block, and the Sun, 864,000 block, you should clearly see the numbers and conversions I've been referencing in their expanded form, condensed into Malcolm's tables. And as I've pointed out before, these numbers are holographic fractals. We can start anywhere and we can end up anywhere else. Enjoy bending your mind around all of that until the next video, deciphering the plasmoid unification model part 4 right here on Alchemical Science. And thanks again to Malcolm Bendall for spending the time to tutor me on some of these concepts. They're really pretty difficult to grasp initially, but once you find your point of reference in the harmonic holographic fractal of numbers, it's pretty hard to unsee the blatant harmonic intervals and ratios that he's condensed into the plasmoid unification model. So thanks for watching and good luck!